I squinted my eyes, leaning back as the soft warmth of the Shiyue pavilion wrapped around me. Beautiful women surrounded me on all sides. The air was thick with the scent of perfume and the sweet, lingering sound of their laughter. "Master Fong, does that feel good?" The maid massaging my shoulders whispered into my ear. A small smile played on my lips. This was the life. It was comfortable. It was right. "Not bad," I said, nodding. "Give her a reward." The maid behind me beamed, her eyes lighting up. "Thank you, master." She moved with renewed energy, applying just the right amount of pressure to my muscles. I opened one eye and frowned slightly. "What did I tell you? Don't call me master. Call me young master." She let out a playful giggle. "Yes, young master." I closed my eyes again, feeling a wave of emotion wash over me. Taoyuan County finally had its first brothel, and it was all thanks to my hard work. Thinking back to when I first crossed over into this world, I had been terrified. Other people get reincarnated as princes or wealthy heirs. Me? I became a penniless magistrate in a backwater county that nobody cared about. It took me about half a month just to get my bearings. This dynasty wasn't like any era in Chinese history I remembered, though the civilization felt familiar enough. I had arrived right in the middle of a brutal war between the Qi and Jing kingdoms. Taoyuan County only survived because it was tucked away in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by treacherous mountains and wild forests. But when I took over this mess, I nearly lost it. I had fewer than 2,000 people under my rule. Every single one of them was skin and bones, starving and desperate. It was so bad that the previous county clerk had actually died of hunger. The teachers and intellectuals had all fled with the refugees. There was no industry, no money, and no way to survive. I had to grit my teeth and push through the resentment of the people. I scraped together every bit of grain I could find and brewed a dozen vats of high-concentration liquor. Then, I ordered the villagers to go out and recruit a group of traveling merchants. We got them drunk, and that was how I finally opened up the market. 5 years later, the Qi kingdom fell. The Jing emperor, Li Che, took the throne with a lightning-fast campaign. The world began to settle, and my life started to look up. Taoyuan County began to thrive. Over the last 7 years, the city limits expanded again and again. I rebuilt the government office, added gambling dens, brothels, and restaurants. By tricking, coaxing, and gathering refugees from all over, the population grew to tens of thousands. By breaking a few rules, okay, a lot of rules, I turned a forgotten wasteland into a literal paradise. I was loving every second of it. I didn't want the imperial court to notice me anymore. I didn't want a promotion. I even made the merchants sign non-disclosure agreements. Of course, a year ago, an imperial inspector named Zhao Li stumbled upon us. He started shouting about auspicious omens and wanted to report my success to the capital. It took a lot of effort and some special persuasion to shut him up and keep him here. Now, I just wanted to stay here forever, living like a local king. I had food, a mansion, and women. What else could a man want? Just as I was basking in my success, someone came rushing into the pavilion, shouting at the top of his lungs. He was an average-looking guy in an official uniform with a blade at his waist. He hurried over to my side and leaned in close. "Young master," he whispered. "Some villagers spotted a group of foreign merchants about 10 miles out. Their carriage doesn't have our official mark. Should we go for it? Do another job?" I snapped. I sat up and kicked him right in the shin. "Zhang Biao, you idiot. We are the government, not bandits. Why are you always talking about kidnapping people? We're going legit now. Do you understand? Legit. What if you scare them away?" Zhang Biao stumbled, falling to the floor in a ridiculously dramatic heap. "But that's how we've always done it," he grumbled, looking hurt. I glared at him. "Oh, so you're talking back now? You tired of living?" The women around me burst into laughter. Taoyuan County was small enough that everyone knew me. Despite my shouting, the people knew I had saved them from starvation. They knew I was all bark and no bite. Zhang Biao only got this kind of treatment because he was close to me. Most people would kill for that kind of familiarity. Zhang Biao scrambled up and stood there sheepishly, waiting for my orders. My mood was ruined, so I stood up. If there was one thing that mattered in Taoyuan, it was investment. Our income model was too simple. We needed new business. We couldn't afford to be careless with new merchants. I cupped my hands toward the pavilion manager. He bowed back instantly. I'm heading out, I told him. I showed up for your grand opening today, so keep the business clean. If I hear about any bullying or harassment in this place, I'll tear the Shiyue pavilion down stone by stone. Got it. The manager started sweating, a fawning smile plastered on his face. Yes, yes. Thank you for your protection, Lord Magistrate. Let's go, Zhangbiao. Back to the office. Your Majesty, we should reach Taoyuan County in half a day. The people from the palace should have reached the main road by now. Guo Tianyang held a map with both hands, presenting it respectfully to the man sitting across from him. The man was in his 40s, with a face hardened by years of war and a gaze that felt like cold steel. This was the Jing Emperor, Li Che. Even though he had unified the country 2 years ago, natural disasters and local uprisings were constant. The pressure had become so great that he had left a letter and snuck out of the palace for a secret inspection. The emperor nodded slowly. Guo Panpan, have you ever heard of this Taoyuan County? Guo Tianyang shook his head. No, Your Majesty. It's deep in the mountains. The road is incredibly bumpy and in total disrepair. It's likely a tiny, insignificant place. The emperor closed his eyes to rest. Guo Tianyang tucked the map away. For a while, the only sound was the annoying creak and groan of the carriage wheels. After a long silence, the emperor sighed and opened his eyes. We'll rest in Taoyuan for a day. This road is terrible. I'd have been better off riding a horse. Guo Tianyang gave a small, flattering smile. Your Majesty, this is a remote area. Bad roads are expected. It will get better once we reach Hengjiang Prefecture. I'm just worried that since Taoyuan is so poor and we have no guards. The emperor snorted. You're getting cowardly in your old age, Guo Panpan. You followed me through years of war, and now you're worried about a little trip? Guo Tianyang panicked. Your Majesty, I didn't mean. Suddenly, the carriage hit a massive bump. Guo Tianyang was launched upward, his head slamming into the roof of the carriage. The emperor only stayed in his seat because he was gripping the armrests with white-knuckled intensity. Go see what happened. The emperor barked. Guo Tianyang rubbed his head and scrambled out of the carriage. He started screaming at the driver immediately. You useless dog. Can't you see the road? You nearly killed the master. The driver didn't answer. He just pointed a trembling finger forward. Master, look. Guo Tianyang's eyes widened. He looked ahead, then looked back at the road they had just traveled, then looked ahead again. He rubbed his eyes hard. Behind them, the road was a mess of mud, broken rocks, and potholes. But right in front of them, the path turned into a perfectly smooth, flat expanse. It was a dark, grayish surface that shimmered strangely under the sunlight. The edges were lined with neat stone borders. The jolt they felt was the moment the carriage wheels transitioned from the dirt track onto this impossible road. Guo Tianyang stood there, completely stunned. What is this? How can a road be like this? The driver looked back at me, his face full of grievance. I'm just as shocked as you are, master, he stammered. I didn't waste time. I scrambled back into the carriage and looked at the emperor. Your Majesty, you have to see this. Please, step outside. The emperor frowned, but he leaned out of the carriage. Just like me, he froze. His face went pale with pure shock. Ahead of us lay a road as straight as an arrow. On both sides, lush green crops stretched toward the horizon. It was a sight unlike anything I'd ever seen in the empire. Guo Panpan, the emperor muttered, his voice low. Are you absolutely sure we are in Taoyuan County? I pulled out the map again, my hands shaking as I traced our route. I nodded vigorously. Yes, Your Majesty. This is it. The carriage continued forward, but the ride was now incredibly smooth. A cool breeze drifted through the window, carrying the scent of the fields. As I looked at the breathtaking scenery, I saw the emperor's tense brow finally begin to relax. I never imagined a tiny county could build such a strange, magnificent road, he mused. Interesting. Truly interesting. It seems I must meet whoever is running this place. I couldn't help but agree. If even the roads are built with such elegance, the officials here must be extraordinary. After another half hour, signs of life appeared. People were walking or riding donkey carts, moving with a relaxed, easy pace. Farmers worked in the fields, their silhouettes dark against the green. The emperor nodded in approval. To see a small county so well organized was a rare thing. But a question hung in the air. Why was a place this successful completely unknown to the capital? As the greenery blurred past, a silhouette began to rise in the distance. When we drew closer, the emperor, the driver, and I all gasped in unison. Taoyuan County wasn't just a town. It was a fortress. The walls were made of grayish-white brick, rising over 10 meters high. It looked impenetrable. Above the massive gate, 3 words were embossed in shimmering gold: Taoyuan County. The emperor's wonder instantly turned to cold, hard fury. He didn't care about the beauty anymore. Guotianyang, get over here. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. I quickly paid the driver to get him away from us and walked over to the emperor, trembling. What is the point of my secret service? The emperor hissed, his voice trembling with rage. A fortress this massive sits barely 100 miles from the capital, and no one reported it to me? I understood his anger. The emperor had spent years at war. He had seen countless towns, and usually, a small county was lucky to have a wall made of dried mud. But this was a high-specification military-grade fortification sitting right under his nose. It was a massive security threat. I collapsed to my knees, my head hitting the ground repeatedly. Your Majesty, I truly didn't know. No one has ever mentioned this. Even the most skilled scouts wouldn't think to check a remote, poor corner like this. Who could have imagined such a luxury city in the middle of nowhere? People nearby started to stare. The emperor sighed, his anger deflating into exhaustion. He had known me since we were children. He couldn't bring himself to be truly cruel to me, even if I was becoming useless in my old age. Get up, he muttered. I'll settle this account with you when we return. I felt a surge of relief. I knew him well. If he said we'd settle it later, I was likely safe. I wiped my nose and eyes, standing up slowly. Thank you, master. Let's go, he said. Into the city. We walked toward the gate, but 3 guards blocked our path. Show your travel permits. I had them ready and handed them over. The guard gave them a quick look and handed them back. What's your business in Taoyuan? Trade, I replied smoothly. My master is in the porcelain business. We're here to scout the market. When the guard heard the word trade, his expression changed. He whispered something to his partner, who immediately sprinted off into the city. The emperor watched this, curious but silent. He decided to test the waters. This wall is quite high and sturdy, the emperor remarked. It must have cost a fortune. Did the local government hike up the taxes to pay for it? Before the guard in front could answer, another guard behind him burst out laughing. I told you they'd ask. Pay up. The first guard rolled his eyes at the emperor, pulled 10 copper coins from his pouch, and handed them to his laughing friend. Then he turned back to us. The wall? It's a fake. Didn't you see the stone slabs are just glued on the outside? The patterns are carved in. Our county magistrate thought the mud walls were ugly, so he came up with this cheap fix. It didn't cost much at all. The emperor and I shared a laugh. I felt a weight lift from my chest. So, it was just a vanity project. The magistrate was an aesthete, not a rebel. Feeling better, the emperor signaled me to reward the guard. I pulled out a silver tael and held it out. But the guard's face went stern. What are you doing? Take that back. We don't do that in Taoyuan. My hand froze in midair. I didn't know whether to keep it out or pull it back. A guard who refused a bribe? That was the strangest thing I'd seen yet. The emperor's eyes narrowed, lost in thought. Even a lowly gatekeeper had this kind of integrity? Taoyuan was becoming more interesting by the second. We tucked the silver away and entered the city. Once inside, we fell silent again. The streets were paved with clean, smooth stone slabs. Buildings lined the roads, and the crowds were thick with activity. Peddlers shouted their wares from stalls that looked brand new. It looked more luxurious than the capital itself. Master, they use stone slabs for the entire road, I whispered. That's unheard of. The emperor nodded solemnly. Even in the capital, most roads were dirt, turning into muddy swamps whenever it rained. But here, the stone path seemed endless. More importantly, the people looked different. Their faces were ruddy and healthy. No one looked starved. In fact, there were a surprising number of plump people walking around, a sight rare even in the heart of the empire. Master, we should find an inn first, I suggested. The emperor agreed. Yes, it seems we will be staying here for a few days. We wandered the streets, distracted by the strange gadgets and vibrant energy of the town. If every county in the world were like Taoyuan, The emperor whispered to himself. I wouldn't have a single worry. Suddenly, I spotted a sign. Master, look. An inn. The emperor looked up and went deadpan. The place was literally named an inn. In the corner of the sign, there was a small symbol that looked like the character for official, but we didn't recognize the style. We stepped inside. The shopkeeper greeted us with a wide grin. Welcome. Are you here for a meal or a room? A room, I said. Excellent. We have 3 tiers. First class is 5 taels, second class is 3, and third class is 1. 5 taels for 1 night. I snapped, stepping forward. Why so expensive? Are you trying to rob us because we're outsiders? The shopkeeper waved his hands dismissively. Oh, heavens no. We're honest folk. Ask anyone. These are the standard rates. Besides, this is a Guan-run hotel. Our prices are at least 20% cheaper than the private ones. The emperor's ears perked up. Guan-run? You mean the government runs this inn? The shopkeeper nodded proudly. Exactly. All the major industries in this county belong to the office. The shopkeeper beamed with pride. Our county magistrate named this place himself. He built it specifically to accommodate traveling merchants. 5 taels might seem steep for a first-class room, but believe me, when the big buyers arrive for wholesale season, you won't even be able to snag a third-class spot. The emperor thought for a moment and nodded. Fine, we'll take the first-class room. This Taoyuan county was getting stranger by the second. A young waiter named Xiao Si led us upstairs, carrying a fresh pot of tea. He poured 2 cups with a practiced flourish. Please, masters, try our tea. The water in Taoyuan is famous for being sweet. He pointed to a red cord hanging by the door. I'll leave you to it. If you need anything, just pull this string. I'll know immediately. The emperor tilted his head, intrigued. Pulling a rope to call for service? Interesting. We could use a system like that in the palace. Xiao Si bowed and closed the door. I turned to the emperor. Your Majesty, have some tea. We haven't had a decent meal all day. I'll go arrange some food and wine. No rush, the emperor said, lifting his cup. He studied the liquid. It was a pale, clear yellow with 2 tea leaves unfurling at the bottom. It looked nothing like the tea in the capital. I picked up my own cup and caught a whiff of the aroma. It was incredibly fresh. Let me taste it for you first, Your Majesty. I took a sip and closed my eyes. The flavor was elegant and crisp, with a hint of medicinal fragrance that far surpassed anything we drank in the imperial city. The tea was good, but the water was even better. The emperor took a long drink, clearly parched from the journey. Refreshing, he muttered. This place just keeps getting more interesting. I started looking around the room and noticed something odd about the decor. Master, look at these walls. I didn't notice before, but they're covered in white cloth. The emperor touched the wall. It felt coarse under his fingers. White linen, he noted. It makes the room look remarkably clean and bright. I wandered into the adjacent bathroom, but a second later, I let out a yelp. Master, there's a well inside the room. A well? On the second floor? The emperor hurried over. He found me hovering over a ceramic basin filled with water, staring in disbelief. It really is a well, I exclaimed, tapping the porcelain. And it's made of ceramic. Making something this large must be incredibly difficult. Using it for a well is pure extravagance. But the shape is so strange. Maybe we should ask the waiter why the well is so small. I was thirsty, and the water looked so clear. I cupped some in my hands and took a big gulp. Sweet and cold. Truly great water. Master, you must try some. I'll go call the waiter. I ran to the door and yanked the red cord. Xiao Si appeared moments later. I dragged him to the ceramic basin. Young man, why is there a well in the middle of the room? Xiao Si looked at the basin, then at me. He'd clearly seen this before. Master, that's not a well. That's a public bucket. We also call it a toilet. I felt like I'd been hit by a bolt of lightning. I looked down at the water I'd just swallowed, then looked at the emperor. He was staring at me with a look that could kill. My face turned bright red, and my stomach began to churn. A toilet? I stammered, trying to hide my horror. Why would you put a latrine inside a guest room? The emperor's expression was equally twisted. Thank God he hadn't taken a drink yet, or the dignity of the throne would have been flushed away forever. It's the new style in Taoyuan, Xiao Si explained cheerfully. It's very convenient. See this cord? It's connected to a water tank. When you're finished with your business, you just pull the cord, and everything is washed away. I fought back the urge to gag. Where is the water tank? You probably saw those tall towers next to the buildings outside, Xiaoxi said. Those are water towers. People refill them every morning. The tank for this room is hidden in the ceiling. The emperor nodded slowly. He had wondered about those strange wooden towers on the way in. But I couldn't hold it back anymore. The realization of what I'd just drank hit me like a physical blow. I leaned over the porcelain bowl and heaved, throwing up everything. Exactly, Xiaoxi chirped. That's how most people use it after they've had too much to drink. When I finished, I glared at him with watery eyes. Xiaoxi reached up, pulled the cord, and a rush of water swept everything away. The smell vanished instantly. The emperor watched, fascinated despite himself. Where does the waste go? The emperor asked. Down the pipes, Xiaoxi said. Taoyuan is on high ground, so it all flows into a massive collection pit outside the county. Our magistrate spent 2 years building the pipe system. I even helped dig it. He says the waste has to be far away, otherwise, it seeps into the ground and makes the water bitter. That's why our water is so sweet. People from the neighboring county even come here to buy our water. I wiped my mouth, my suspicion rising. If you flush it all into a pit, doesn't it overflow or clog the pipes? You're sharp, master. Xiaoxi slapped his hands together. The pit isn't actually that big. It's near the river downstream. We use a special water wheel to move the waste further away. To where? I asked. The neighboring county, Xiaoxi replied with a grin. The emperor and I froze. The magistrate said we have to keep Taoyuan clean. Xiaoxi continued, oblivious to our shock. He's a kind man. He couldn't bear to see people go without good water, so he makes sure ours stays pure. Kind, I thought, my blood boiling. He's dumping his sewage on his neighbors and then selling them sweet water? I've never seen anyone this shameless in the imperial palace. The emperor looked like he was about to be sick too. The water in the capital was notoriously bitter. Now we knew why. Building the pipes was hard work, Xiaoxi added. The magistrate even thought about connecting them to the capital's moat. He said there are so many people there, it would be a waste not to. But the terrain was too complex for the water wheels to push it that far. The emperor's eyes turned cold. This magistrate wasn't just eccentric. He was a menace. Is the waste just thrown away then? The emperor asked. Don't you use it for fertilizer? Some of it, Xiaoxi said. But we don't rely on farming to make money here. Oh, and we don't use wooden scrapers in our toilets. We have water sprayers and paper. He reached behind the toilet and pulled out a wooden handle that looked like a faucet. Press this, and water shoots out. It's connected to a separate tank filled with salt water. The magistrate says salt water gets you the cleanest. We refill it every morning. My eyes widened. Salt water? For your backside? The emperor rubbed his temples, looking dizzy. The sheer luxury and the sheer absurdity was overwhelming. Xiaoxi then opened a small compartment next to the toilet, revealing a stack of soft, white sheets. Once you're done washing, use this paper to dry off. It's already been softened for you. Just throw it in the basket when you're done. Using paper, for that? The emperor and I whispered in unison. We were completely stunned. In the palace, even the highest officials didn't treat paper with such casual disregard. This Taoyuan County wasn't just a town. It was another world entirely. Xiaoxi saw our confused expressions and sighed, looking a bit embarrassed. He told us the inn could only provide this kind of paper and apologized because it was still a bit stiff. Apparently, the paper used at the magistrate's office was as soft as dough. He also warned us that if we used the public restrooms outside, we'd have to use this paper too. The magistrate had banned the use of traditional silk cloths for cleaning, calling them unhygienic, so you couldn't find them anywhere in the county. Then, Xiaoxi lowered his voice. He told us that when the magistrate first introduced this toilet paper, many people resisted. There was a brute named Zhang Biao, one of the magistrate's men, who caught someone using silk in a stall and actually sewed the man's pants shut while he was still wearing them. Xiaoxi told us to never provoke Zhang Biao if we saw him. He described the man as ugly, with a distinct mole on his forehead, possessing incredible strength but very little brains. After pointing out the toothbrushes and more cleaning supplies, Xiaoxi bowed and left. The emperor and I stood there, stunned beyond words. I felt a sudden, uncomfortable tension in my lower back just thinking about that Zhang Biao fellow. The emperor waved his hand dismissively, sending Xiaoxi away, then turned to the side. There, next to the toothbrushes, was a mirror. We hadn't even noticed it before. The emperor stared at his reflection. It was incredibly clear. He could see every new wrinkle on his face and the graying hair at his temples. He reached out, touching the cold surface of the glass. He asked with a bitter smile if he was getting old, wondering why everything in this tiny county was something he had never seen or heard of before. As soon as Xiao Si was gone, Gua Tianyong lunged toward the compartment like a hungry dog. He pulled out a thick stack of the white paper and rubbed it between his fingers. He gasped, telling the emperor it was high-quality paper, the kind you could actually write on. The emperor glanced at it and nodded slowly. He said he was tired and wanted to rest. He planned to find a way to meet this local magistrate tomorrow. He wanted to see what kind of eccentric genius could run a county like this. Meanwhile, in the back courtyard of the Taoyuan County Government Office, a man named Fang Jingyi was lounging on a chair. He was chewing on some dried fruit, grumbling that the massage he was getting was nowhere near as good as the girls at the local tavern. The girl massaging him was Xiao Tao, an orphan he had taken in 6 years ago. She was 16 now and quite pretty. Hearing his complaints, she gave him a hard shove and told him to just go to the tavern then. Fang Jingyi started to get up, but Xiao Tao pinned him back down and started kneading his shoulders with extra force. He laughed, telling her that was the perfect pressure. Just then, a man named Zhang Biao walked in. He reported that his men had spotted 2 new merchants in town claiming to be in the porcelain business. He asked if he should go bring them in. Fang Jingyi shook his head. He told Zhang Biao not to be so impatient. He said they weren't bandits anymore. If the timing was right, the merchants would come to them. He explained that the county's industries were just starting to grow and they needed to do things properly and legally now. If they kept causing trouble for the people, it wouldn't last. He joked that with his track record, he'd be promoted to the capital soon, and he didn't want any angry victims following him there. Zhang Biao grinned, telling him not to worry. He wouldn't let anyone take the master away. He said Fang Jingyi would stay in Taoyuan County even if he died there. Fang Jingyi just told him to get lost. The next morning, the emperor woke up feeling more refreshed than he ever did in the palace. The bed was strangely comfortable. Gua Tianyong, who had slept in the servant's side room, was already waiting. He told the emperor he had checked the bed earlier. It was padded with 12 layers of soft cushions. No wonder it felt so good. After a simple but delicious breakfast of porridge and side dishes, the emperor sighed. He remarked that even the food here had more flavor than his meals at the palace. It seemed a lowly 7th-rank official was living a better life than the son of heaven. Gua Tianyong whispered that this magistrate seemed reckless and that the luxury in this county was a bad sign that shouldn't be encouraged. The emperor snapped at him to shut up. He asked if Gua Tianyong thought the money just fell from the sky. He said if every person in his empire could live in such luxury and abundance, he would be the happiest man alive. We headed out onto the streets. The emperor watched everything closely. Every alley was spotless. There wasn't a single beggar or thug in sight. Even the commoners looked clean and well-dressed, almost like scholars. As we reached a crowded area, a strange song filled the air. You love me. I love you. Taoyuan milk tea is so sweet. The emperor and Gua Tianyong both stopped and stared. It was a tea stall run by an honest-looking middle-aged man who was singing at the top of his lungs to attract customers. Gua Tianyong looked disgusted, muttering about how vulgar the song was and how weird this place was becoming. He spat on the ground in annoyance. Suddenly, an old woman wearing a red armband lunged out from the crowd and blocked our path. She pointed a finger at us and shrieked that spitting on the street carried a 5-1 fine. The emperor frowned, looking at her armband which had the words Health Inspector written on it. Gua Tianyong was furious. He argued that he spat in the palace all the time and asked who she thought she was. The old woman didn't budge. She told us we must be from out of town and explained that the magistrate himself had set the rule. She threatened to take us to the authorities if we didn't pay. Give her the money, the emperor said coldly. Gua Tianyong reluctantly handed over the coins. The old woman smiled, satisfied. Before she could leave, the emperor stopped her. He politely asked why there were no beggars in Taoyuan County. The old woman laughed. She told him he was a funny man. She said they didn't have beggars because the magistrate was a kind man who couldn't stand to see poor people. So, He had them all hauled away to dig trenches. The emperor nearly choked on his breath. Guotianyang leaned in and whispered that the magistrate was a monster who was ruining the reputation of all officials. The old woman overheard him and got angry, telling us that nobody in Taoyuan spoke ill of the magistrate. She said if we weren't outsiders, we'd have been beaten for saying that. Guotianyang snapped back, asking how taking beggars to dig trenches was kindness. He called it a death sentence. Before the woman could respond, a shout went up from down the street. Someone was going to court. A crowd started running to watch the drama. The old woman's eyes lit up, and she sprinted off to join them. "Let's go see," the emperor said, his pace quickening. Guotianyang followed behind, still muttering under his breath about the injustice of it all. I followed the crowd, jogging toward the yamen entrance. When I arrived, I stopped dead in my heels. My jaw nearly hit the floor. Before me stood a massive complex that covered at least 3 or 4 acres. There was a stone building at the front, followed by a vast plaza paved with smooth stone slabs. A long, wide staircase led up to the main structure. It was a 3-story building, cold and imposing in its gray and white design. Standing at the base of those stairs, I felt a heavy sense of pressure. Guotianyang's mouth hung wide open. He muttered about how much money it must have cost to build such a place, especially for a mere county office. I didn't say a word. I stared at the main archway for a long moment before stepping inside. The interior felt more familiar, though it was much larger than a standard yamen. A massive plaque hung high above the hall, carved with the words "hanging high" and "listening clearly." A crowd of locals had already gathered around the gallery. In the center of the hall, one man was kneeling while another stood. Guards lined the sides, holding their ceremonial staffs, and standing perfectly straight. Everyone was waiting for the magistrate. Backstage, Fang Jingyi was grumbling as a young woman named Xiao Tao helped him into his official robes. He complained about troublemakers filing lawsuits before he'd even finished his nap. He'd had 2 months of peace, and now this. He asked Xiao Tao what was for lunch, complaining that he was sick of beef. She just rolled her eyes, told him to get out there, and headed off to cook. Fang Jingyi straightened his sleeves, looked himself over with satisfaction, and marched out. "Court is in session," he shouted. Down below, a man named Zhang Laolu was kneeling and sobbing. As the crowd grew thicker, his wailing got louder. When Fang Jingyi finally took his seat behind the bench, Zhang Laolu looked up, wiped his eyes, and went back to crying. "My lord, I have been wronged," he wailed. "I want to sue the yamen?" Fang Jingyi interrupted, his face twisting with irritation. "You've got some nerve. I leave you people alone for a few days, and now you think you can walk all over me." He slammed his gavel down hard. "Who is suing me?" The crowd erupted in laughter. Fang Jingyi slammed the gavel several more times. "Silence. Anyone else who makes a noise gets 10 strokes of the cane." The room went dead quiet. I watched the scene, my brow furrowed. I was disappointed. This magistrate looked like a total mess, slouching, half awake, and rude. How did a man like this have so much authority? Guotianyang leaned in and whispered that the man was a tyrant. I told him to shut up and watch. Zhang Laolu trembled. "My lord, I'm not suing you. I'm suing the constable, Lu Fa." Fang Jingyi's face flushed red. Fine. Don't take such long pauses next time. What did he do?" Zhang Laolu explained that he ran a restaurant in the north of the city. Lu Fa had eaten there multiple times without paying and had even smashed 2 jars of expensive wine. Despite mediation, he refused to pay back the 17 taels he owed. Fang Jingyi's expression softened. To him, this was a tiny issue. He turned to the man standing next to Zhang Laolu, the constable, Lu Fa. "Did you do it?" he barked. Seeing the magistrate's anger, Lu Fa didn't dare lie. He fell to his knees, crying that he was broke. He claimed he was in a bad mood when he smashed the wine, and that he even owed 10 taels to a gambling house. This time, Fang Jingyi was actually furious. He laughed coldly. "I told you specifically, no gambling and no harassing the people. You didn't listen to a word. Guards, give him 20 strokes." Before the guards could even move, Lu Fa gritted his teeth, pulled up his shirt to bite on the fabric, and laid flat on the floor. The sound of the cane hitting flesh echoed through the hall. 20 hits later, Lu Fa's backside was a bloody mess. He weakly thanked the magistrate for the punishment. I was stunned. The magistrate's authority was absolute. The defendant didn't even try to argue. He just took the beating. It was a strange way to run a court, but it was effective. Fang Jingyi announced that since it was a first offense, Liu Fa would have his salary docked and would have to sweep the streets for 3 months. If it happened again, he'd be kicked out of the county. Liu Fa actually smiled through his pain as they carried him off to a clinic. Zhang Laolu looked horrified. He hadn't expected such a brutal beating for his neighbor. But more importantly, he realized he still hadn't been paid. "My lord, what about my money?" Fang Jingyi spread his hands. "You saw him. He's broke." Zhang Laolu froze. He had gained an enemy and lost his money. He looked like his world had ended. Fang Jingyi sighed. "I can't let an honest man suffer. What's your restaurant called? Tell you what, I'll come by tonight and have a few drinks. We'll call it even." Zhang Laolu went from despair to pure joy. He bowed repeatedly, thanked the magistrate, and sprinted out of the hall. Before leaving, Fang Jingyi glanced at me and Guo Tianyang. He knew everyone in town, and we clearly weren't locals. To him, we probably looked like new merchants. As the crowd dispersed, I stood there, completely baffled. Was that it? The whole thing felt lawless and bizarre. Guo Tianyang was just as confused, suggesting we just go talk to the man directly. I shook my head. "Not yet. He said he's going to that restaurant tonight. We're going too." We spent the afternoon wandering the streets. I saw so many strange and impressive things that I had Guo Tianyang write them all down. By evening, we found Lao Lu's bistro in the north of the city. It was easy to spot because of the massive red banner hanging from the second floor. I finally understood. The magistrate wasn't just going for a drink. He was using his presence to bring the man enough business to cover the debt. The man was cleverer than he looked. Guo Tianyang leaned in, whispering in my ear, "Your Majesty, this man's behavior is completely improper. An official and a merchant conspiring like this? It's scandalous." I felt the same way. Seeing the government and private businesses tangled together felt messy and undignified. "Let's go inside and see for ourselves," I replied. Fang Jingyi hadn't arrived yet. We headed straight to the second floor and grabbed a table right by the stairs. We ordered 2 simple vegetable dishes and waited. Before long, noise erupted from downstairs. Fang Jingyi strolled up the stairs, flanked by his usual entourage. He glanced at me as he passed, but didn't stop. He took a seat at a large central table. Zhang Laolu, the owner, hurried over with a beaming smile. "Lord Magistrate, the chives are ready. Shall I bring them out?" Fang Jingyi waved a hand lazily. "Bring them. But remember, that banner outside stays up for 3 days at most." "Understand. I know the rules, my lord," Zhang replied, bowing. "Don't you worry. One more thing," Fang said, his voice slow and deliberate. "Clear this floor. Send everyone else downstairs. I don't like being disturbed while I eat." He glanced at his guard, Zhang Biao, who immediately understood. Zhang Biao marched to the stairs and bellowed at the top of his lungs. "Listen up. Young Master Fang is picking up the tab for everyone tonight." The guests on the second floor didn't need to be told twice. They cheered and scrambled downstairs, thrilled to get a free meal. Downstairs, the roar of the crowd sounded like a tidal wave. Zhang Laolu was ecstatic. Having the magistrate visit was pure profit. He turned to us, the only ones left. "Gentlemen, would you mind moving downstairs? The magistrate is paying for everything tonight. It's on the house." I stayed silent. Guo Tianyang raised his voice, sounding sharp. "We can afford our own meal. We don't need charity." Zhang Laolu looked trapped. He leaned in and whispered, "Please, if you move, I'll give you a free jar of wine when you leave. How about that?" I didn't move. I just sipped my tea. Guo Tianyang glared at the owner. "Just watch the food and don't ruin my master's mood." The owner looked helplessly at Fang Jingyi. The magistrate was watching us with a playful, curious look. Finally, he spoke. "Since they don't want to leave, why not let these 2 friends join me? Would you honor me with your company?" I turned, gave a small smile, and stood up without hesitation. Guo Tianyang followed close behind. Once we were seated, Fang Jingyi studied us. "You 2 look like outsiders. Just get into town." I didn't blink. I stared right back at him. "Greetings, Magistrate Fang. My name is Li Long. I'm in the porcelain business in the capital. This is my accountant, Old Guo." Fang Jingyi looked slightly uncomfortable under my gaze. And what brings you to Taoyuan County? We were heading to Hengjiang Prefecture to restock, I said. We're just passing through. Fang Jingyi's eyes sharpened. Hengjiang? That's quite a detour from the capital. The main road is much faster, isn't it? Guotianyang had the excuse ready. We heard there was a landslide on the main road. We didn't want to get stuck, so we took the back roads. We stumbled into Taoyuan by accident. So when are you leaving? Fang asked. We aren't, I replied. Taoyuan is full of strange and wonderful things. If we bring some of this back to the capital, the profit would be massive. I hope the magistrate won't mind us doing business here. Fang Jingyi laughed. Mind. We love merchants here. To be honest, our latest invention, the porcelain toilet, is a masterpiece. It's complex, huge, and high quality. It would sell anywhere. When Guotianyang heard the word toilet, his face looked like he'd swallowed a fly. Of course, Fang continued, that's not really for export. But we can talk about custom orders. Anything you see in this town is up for negotiation. Just come to the yamen to sign the contracts. See anything you like yet? I took a slow sip of my tea. To be honest, I'm stunned. Everything here is an eye-opener. Even this tea. I doubt even the emperor in his palace has tasted anything like it. The capital doesn't have this. Fang asked. No, I said. As soon as the word left my mouth, Fang Jingyi slammed his hand on the table and stood up, looking furious. Silence. Mr. Li, do not speak such nonsense. How dare you slander the emperor? I froze. He continued, his voice full of righteous passion. The whole world belongs to the emperor. You suggest he cannot enjoy a simple cup of tea? I remember when His Majesty led his armies in person, sleeping in the wild to bring peace to the land. He works tirelessly for his people, never resting for a moment. Without the emperor, there is no Taoyuan. Without Taoyuan, there is no tea. The thought that he cannot taste this in the capital breaks my heart. I wish I could fly there myself just to brew him a pot. He looked at the tea with a face full of grief. If even the emperor cannot drink this, how can I have the face to finish it? With a dramatic flourish, he poured the tea onto the floor. Long live the emperor, he shouted, then sat back down with an air of noble sacrifice. Behind him, his assistant Xiao Tao rolled her eyes. I knew what she was thinking. He'd used this same patriotic routine on foreign merchants years ago. He always said it was better to establish a loyalist reputation early, just in case he ever had to answer to the higher-ups. I sat there, my hand still holding my cup, completely stunned. It was awkward. It was bizarre, and Guotianyang was even more shocked, looking around as if searching for an audience. This man was shamelessly flattering the emperor to an empty room. Guotianyang looked at me, then cleared his throat. Long live the emperor, he muttered. Fang Jingyi's ears perked up. Mr. Gua, love for the emperor shouldn't just be on your lips. It must be in your heart, like it is in mine. Think of all those officials who shout slogans while stabbing the emperor in the back. They are no better than animals. Guotianyang's face went dark. He felt personally attacked. He shot me a nervous, guilty look. The magistrate is right, he squeaked. That's exactly what I was thinking. I felt my face heating up. I'd heard a lot of flattery in my life, but never like this. It was cringeworthy, yet strangely effective. Fang Jingyi suddenly changed the subject. Speaking of this tea, our local masters developed a special roasting technique. If this reached the capital, the nobles would fight over it. And then, finally, the emperor would get to taste it. Are you too interested in the tea business? Guotianyang's face twisted. All that dramatic acting just to sell some leaves? Mr. Gua, what's wrong with your face? Fang asked. Nothing, Gua replied through gritted teeth. I pulled myself together. The tea is excellent. But what's the price? 10 taels of silver for 1 ounce, Fang said smoothly. 10 taels? Guotianyang shivered. I didn't know the market well, but he did. In the capital, a whole pound of decent tea cost 1 tael. Even the premium stuff was rarely 10 taels an ounce. This was common tea grown right here in the county. That's a bit expensive, Gua stammered. Expensive? Fang Jingyi countered, looking offended. 10 taels for tea the emperor hasn't even tasted? That's a bargain. Fang Jingyi didn't stop there. He leaned in, his eyes gleaming with the fervor of a salesman. Let me teach you the way of business, he said. The cost is 100 taels per pound. But by the time this reaches the capital, You shouldn't sell it for a copper less than 200. Don't worry about whether people can afford it. It's all about product positioning. He gestured grandly, as if painting a masterpiece in the air. You tell them this tea is grown on prime, golden real estate. It gets exactly 16 hours of sunlight a day. Every single acre is tended to by its own dedicated caretaker. Tell them the plantation is nestled next to a natural hot spring with a gold mine running underneath the soil. I listened, stunned. He was just getting started. And the pickers? Fong continued, a smirk playing on his lips. They aren't just peasants. They are heavenly beauties, masters of poetry and painting. They don't use their hands. They pick the leaves with their lips. For every leaf they pluck, they recite a line of classical verse. He then suggested we order a batch of exquisite porcelain boxes from the county. Put half an ounce in each box. Call it small box tea. Tell the world that only royalty and high nobility have the status to drink it. If a high official doesn't have this on his desk, is he even part of the inner circle? Does he even belong in the palace? That's what nobility is, my friends. They don't buy the best, they buy the most expensive. In Taoyuan County, our motto is, we don't seek quality, we only seek the price tag. Guo Tianyang covered his face in shame. He had spent decades in the palace thinking he knew every trick in the book. Looking at Fang Jingyi, he realized he was a mere amateur. This man was a professional shark. I sat there in a daze. I felt like a stalk of green leek waiting to be harvested. I wondered if the palace procurement officers were being swindled like this every single day. Fang Jingyi smiled at us, looking satisfied. He probably thought he was a shepherd guiding two lost lambs toward the light of modern marketing. He looked like he expected a reward for his wisdom. Just then, the servers began bringing food to the second floor. Zhang Laolu, the restaurant owner, personally carried the main dish to our table. Haha, the chicken soup is here, he announced, setting it down. Steam rose from the bowl. The broth was milky white, and the meat looked tender, as if it had been simmering for hours. Come, drink some soup, Fong said, playing the gracious host. Traveling is hard work. Being able to drink this soup in my county is a true blessing. He served me a bowl first, making sure to scoop out a large chicken leg. Then he served himself another leg. Finally, he handed a bowl to Guo Tianyang. It contained a piece of dry chicken breast. Guo stared at his bowl with a look of deep resentment. This official really knew how to play favorites based on status. Fong didn't care. He knew I was the one in charge. Why waste the good meat on a follower who spent the whole time making sarcastic remarks? So, Fong asked, taking a sip of soup. Are you interested in the tea? Our porcelain is good, but it's not unique. The profit margins on tea are much higher, and it's easier to transport. No breakage. I nodded as I ate. The soup was fresh and delicious, a flavor I hadn't experienced even in the palace. Magistrate Fong, what is this tea called? Fong hesitated. He clearly hadn't thought that far ahead. This roasted tea had only recently started circulating in the county. He cleared his throat, his face turning serious. This tea brings fortune. It strengthens the spirit and extends your life. Therefore, I call it great grade heavenly immortal tea. Yes, that's it. Guo Tianyang's face turned bright red. He looked like he was about to explode. It was obvious the man had just made the name up on the spot. To be honest, I said, putting down my spoon. We didn't bring that much silver with us. We might not be able to buy a large stock. How much did you bring? Fong asked, his eyes lighting up. 2,000 taels. Fong's excitement was visible. 2,000? For porcelain traders, that's a decent start. No matter. Take what you can. We need to open the market first. You can always come back for more. He poured us each a cup of wine. I took a sip, but the moment the liquid hit my tongue, my expression shifted. Peach blossom nectar? Fong laughed. Sharp palate. Yes, this is peach blossom nectar. It's the backbone of our county's economy. Everything you see here was built on this wine. The next batch isn't even finished yet. I bet in the capital, people are begging for a single cup. My mood turned cold. Guo Tianyang shot me a nervous glance. This wine was famous for its strength. In our empire, men took pride in their tolerance, and this wine had taken the capital by storm. I had even designated it as an official tribute wine for the palace. But that wasn't the issue. I set my cup down, my face a mask of calm. I heard this wine belongs to the Prince of Wu. Does he back Taoyuan County? Not at all, Fong said, waving a hand dismissively. This wine has always belonged to us. We just have a business arrangement with the prince. Years ago, his people stumbled upon it, and we signed an exclusive distribution deal. He's making a fortune off us. Fong seemed happy to use the prince's name to boost his own status. He explained that he had considered partnering with the prince for the tea as well, but decided against it. He didn't want one person holding all the cards. He wanted a wide network of distributors so his own position would remain stable. He didn't care who I was, as long as I wasn't working for the prince or the emperor. I felt a wave of relief. The Prince of Wu was known as a virtuous prince in the capital, but it seemed he had just gotten lucky with this business deal. Has the prince ever visited Taoyuan? I asked. Fong rolled his eyes. Never. He just sends his steward to handle the trade. That's why I don't want to work with him again. The man has no ambition. He's lazy. If I hadn't been desperate for cash and manpower back then, I wouldn't have signed with him. He complained that the prince did zero marketing. The wine sold itself based on quality alone. Fong felt like he had wasted a golden opportunity by tying himself to a useless partner. But now that the county was thriving, he needed new channels. The tea was his next big move, and this time, there would be no exclusive deals. I see, I said with a smile. Taoyuan County is indeed impressive. I think I must cooperate with you, Magistrate Fong. Where's the tea plantation? We'd like to see it tomorrow before we decide. Fong gave me a shy, secretive smile. Trade secret. I can't tell you. I knew what that meant. There was no plantation. He was probably buying cheap wild tea for pennies, roasting it with some common herbs, and calling it heavenly immortal tea. People only liked it because they were used to the old ways of brewing. I didn't press him. I raised my glass instead. Very well. I'll take a trial batch back to the capital. I'll be relying on you, Magistrate Fong. Of course, of course. As the night went on, Fong continued to lecture us on hunger marketing and brand effect. Most of it sounded like gibberish to us, but by the end of the feast, we were all in high spirits. Zhang Laolu approached us with a wide, greasy smile. Magistrate Fong, he said, bowing low. Did you enjoy your meal? Fong was busy picking his teeth with a chicken bone. He gave a lazy nod. Not bad. It was passable. How much do I owe you? Give me the bill. A total of 506 taels, Zhang said, still bowing. But for you, I'll drop the change. Let's call it an even 500. The room went silent. 500 taels? Were we eating solid silver? Even I was stunned. Fong's face twisted. He let out a sharp, angry laugh. Well, Zhang Laolu, you've got guts. Trying to fleece me? You've got a bright future ahead of you. Cold sweat poured down Zhang's face as he scrambled to his knees. Sir, please, let me explain. Some kids from the neighborhood didn't know the rules. They ran outside shouting that today was a free feast. Dozens of people swarmed in. We had to set up tables all the way down the street. I didn't have a choice. I even ran out of ingredients and had to borrow from the shop next door. This price is already a discount. Fong actually looked amused. The people of Taoyuan are getting craftier by the day, he chuckled. Then his eyes narrowed. But 500 taels for a few dozen people is still a robbery. It wasn't just the food. Zhang wailed. Those rascals insisted on the finest wine. And once they were drunk, they demanded Korean melons. I had to rush out and buy a dozen of them. Fong's eyes lit up instantly. The Korean melons are ripe? How much were they? 10 taels each, Zhang whispered. Are they sweet? Perfectly ripe, sir. Gua Tianyong and I exchanged a confused look. 500 taels for a meal didn't shock us as much as the fruit. It was early spring. Where on earth did they get melons in this season? It wasn't even summer yet. Fong scowled, but for a different reason. 10 taels? Those little brats. Charging that much in their own county. Are the rinds made of gold or the seeds made of jewels? Gua Tianyong muttered under his breath. So you do know it's expensive. I told them the same thing. Zhang cried. But the guys from the agriculture department told me to take it or leave it. There are no melons anywhere else right now. These are greenhouse melons. They said they're selling them at cost because they're so hard to grow. Fine, fine. Fong waved him off. I get it. Zhang Biao, pay the man. A man stepped forward to settle the bill. When I heard the name, my heart skipped a beat. Zhang Biao. The legendary enforcer who slapped everyone he met. He looked so ordinary that I hadn't even noticed him standing there the whole time. With a casual flick of his sleeve, Zhang Biao tossed a heavy cloth bag onto the table. It landed with a dull, metallic thud. Count it. Exactly 500 taels. My jaw nearly dropped. He was carrying 500 taels of raw silver in his sleeve? You just carry that around? I asked, my voice shaking slightly. Zhang Biao shrugged. Yeah, my master carries 1,000 taels in cash every time he goes out. I've still got the other 500 right here. He lifted his right arm, and I could see the heavy weight pulling at the fabric. I swallowed hard. If this man were in the military, he'd be a general. His arm strength must be terrifying. Why don't you carry banknotes? It's all the same, Zhang Biao replied. Raw silver feels more secure. Seeing our shocked expressions, Fong smiled. Gentlemen, this is my subordinate, Zhang Biao. The Sea Emperor. He's the only constable in this county and our strongest warrior. In the underworld, they call him the Star of Taoyuan. He can throw a man like a sandbag. If you ever run into any thugs, just look for him. I gave a respectful bow. Impressive. Truly a man of strength. Zhang Biao puffed out his chest with pride. Well, Fong said, standing up. I won't see you out. If you decide to move forward tomorrow, come to the yamen and find me directly. That night, back at the inn, the candlelight flickered against the walls. I sat in silence for a long time, thinking. Gua Tianyang stood by my side, waiting. Prepare the banknotes. We go to the yamen tomorrow to sign the contract. I'm becoming more and more curious about this Magistrate Fong. Your Majesty, Gua Tianyang whispered. Are we still going to Hengjiang Prefecture? No. We've seen enough here. We've stayed too long already. The Crown Prince is overseeing the capital, and the ministers must be getting anxious. I sighed deeply. I can't believe it. Fong Jingyi is barely in his 20s, yet he runs this county like a dream. Thinking of the Crown Prince, it gives me a headache. He's nowhere near this level. Gua Tianyang hesitated. Sir, Fong's methods are unconventional. Is it really appropriate for a local official to be personally involved in business like this? Extraordinary men do extraordinary things, I countered. What he has achieved here would put every other official in the world to shame. In just a few days, my eyes have been opened. Though, I still have questions. What is a greenhouse? He's a fascinating man. Gua Tianyang huffed. I think he's just good at cheap tricks. Who pours sewage at people's doors? He tricks the capital's nobility into buying common tea, and he used every trick in the book just to sell to you. Enough, I snapped, my voice cold. If cheap tricks can make the people this wealthy, then I don't care. If you had even 30% of his talent, I wouldn't have such a headache. When we return, investigate his files. I want to know why no inspectors have ever reported the truth about Taoyuan County. Gua Tianyang bit his lip, looking like he'd been kicked. Yes, Your Majesty. The next morning, Fong was woken up by his maid, Xiao Tao. He sat there bleary-eyed as she dressed him. What time is it? He mumbled. It's noon, she said, pulling his robes tight. Those merchants from the capital are waiting for you. She slapped a cold, wet towel onto his face. Fong jolted awake. Hey, I haven't slept well in days. Can't you be a little more gentle? Xiao Tao just sighed. Fong slept at least 12 hours a day. She couldn't understand how he wasn't exhausted from all that lying around. Once dressed, Fong wandered out. He had remodeled the entire yamen back area into a modern office space. There were meeting rooms, mediation rooms, and archives. It looked nothing like a traditional government building. He led us into a specific room he had built for private meetings. It was tucked away, perfectly soundproofed, with no windows. The walls were lined with oil lamps. On the far wall, a poem was carved into the stone. With eyebrows raised, I coolly defy 1,000 pointing fingers. Head bowed, I like a willing ox serve the children. Below the poem sat a strange device, a giant horn with a needle and a hand crank. It looked alien and mysterious. I stood before the poem, silent. When Fong entered with Zhang Biao, I turned slowly. Magistrate Fong, did you write this? No, Fong said smoothly. I found it in a fragment of an ancient book. I liked the sentiment, so I put it on the wall. I sighed. A masterpiece. It's a tragedy the full poem is lost. Fong looked at me, probably thinking I was some overly patriotic scholar. So, he said, getting down to business. Have you two decided on the tea? I nodded. We'll take it. I look forward to a smooth partnership, Magistrate Fong. I knew these tea bricks would sell like crazy in the capital. Once the deal was done, it was time to head back. I looked at Gua Tianyong and gave him the signal. Gua, the money. Gua Tianyong pulled out the banknotes and laid them on the table in front of Magistrate Fong Jingyi. I leaned forward, curious. Magistrate Fong, where do we pick up the goods? I've already got them ready for you, Fong said. He gestured to his assistant, Zhang Biao. Zhang Biao stepped forward and unslung a heavy bundle from his back. Inside were exactly 20 tea bricks, each weighing about a pound. He also pulled out a small iron plaque. Here's your 20 pounds of tea, Fong explained. Check the quality if you like. And take this iron plaque. Next time you come to Taoyuan County, hang this on your carriage. It'll guarantee you a smooth ride through my territory. When you need more stock, someone will find you. You don't need to see me personally. Fong handed me 2 pieces of paper. One was a standard partnership contract. The other was a non-disclosure agreement. I scanned the contract first. Everything looked fine, matching what we'd discussed over drinks. But the NDA made me pause. Magistrate Fong, I said, pointing to a line. Why can't we mention Taoyuan County to anyone? Fong smiled thinly. It's a temporary measure. My county is small and resources are limited. Our specialties are in high demand, but our production can't keep up. This protects your interests too. Right now, you have the exclusive rights. Plus, I don't want a massive influx of outsiders. My people are simple and honest. I don't want them corrupted by the outside world. I kept reading. Then I hit the penalty clause. It said if I broke the agreement, my mouth would fill with sores, my limbs would go weak, and I'd suffer from constant dizziness and cold sweats. It ended by saying I'd be spat on by every citizen of Taoyuan until I died. Can we change this part? I asked, a bit disturbed. No, Fong replied flatly. And the final interpretation of all terms belongs to Taoyuan County. What does that even mean? Exactly what it says. I wiped a bead of sweat from my forehead. This was a predatory contract. I didn't care much about the curses, but that final interpretation, it felt like a trap. Still, I needed that tea. I bit my tongue and pressed my thumb into the red ink, leaving my print on the page. It wasn't my real name anyway. Gua Tianyong winced as he watched me sign. He looked at Fong with a mix of fear and respect. I could tell what he was thinking. This magistrate had the heart of a palace eunuch, ruthless and ready to eat people alive. Fong picked up the contract, looking satisfied. One more thing. I need you both to read the contract aloud. Zhang Biao, get ready. Zhang Biao moved to a cabinet and pulled out a roll of silver foil. He walked over to that strange brass horn device and started cranking a handle. He carefully attached the foil to a copper cylinder. What is this for? I asked. Fong grabbed my hand with sudden enthusiasm and led me to the horn. Come. Just read the document into this opening. It's a local custom. Speaking the words proves your sincerity as a partner. It's just a little ceremony. I'll count to 3. I was confused, but I'd already signed the thing. Why stop now? Fong counted down, and I started reading the NDA aloud. As I spoke, Zhang Biao kept cranking the handle. I noticed a tiny needle at the base of the horn vibrating, etching thousands of microscopic dots onto the silver foil. When we finished, Zhang Biao took the foil and left the room without a word. I was dying to know what that device was, but Fong didn't give me the chance to ask. He practically shoved us out the door. A moment later, Gua and I were standing outside the yamen, staring at each other in silence. Suddenly, a carriage pulled up. Are you two heading back to the capital? The driver shouted. The magistrate ordered me to take you. I felt a small wave of relief. Maybe Fong wasn't all bad. He'd even arranged our transport. We climbed in, ready for the long trip home. But as soon as we sat down, the driver poked his head inside with a greasy grin. That'll be 10 silver taels, sirs. Gua and I just stared at him. The man was a shark. The ride back was miserable. It started to rain, and once we crossed the border out of Taoyuan County, the roads turned into a swamp. The carriage got stuck in deep mud pits over and over. Poor Gua had to jump out and help the driver push. By the time we reached the outskirts of the capital, I was in a foul mood. The capital was a mess. People were everywhere, horses were screaming, and the traffic was a nightmare. Our carriage jolted violently, and I heard the driver scream. Gua leaned out to check. The wheel was buried in mud, and the driver had fallen face first into a puddle. He sat there, covered in filth, clutching his bruised head. This hellhole, the driver cursed. I should have stayed in the county. A group of ragged beggars nearby saw him and burst into laughter. Guo frowned and tried to hurry the man up. This wasn't Taoyuan. There was no order here, only chaos. The driver tried to stand, but he'd clearly hurt his leg. The laughter from the crowd got louder. I couldn't take it anymore. Forget the carriage, I said. We're walking. But master, it's pouring. Guo protested. You'll get soaked. I pointed at the road. Is the carriage moving? These potholes are so deep we won't make it back until tomorrow. Driver, you go on back. I had Guo hand the man 20 taels. The driver's eyes lit up, he thanked us profusely, and he turned the carriage around as fast as he could. As we walked, Guo looked back at the retreating carriage. I knew what he was thinking. We both missed the paved, clean roads of Taoyuan. This was the capital, the heart of the empire, and yet it was disgusting. The streets were crooked, sewage ran through the gutters, and people dumped trash right outside their front doors. Children played in the filthy water, splashing each other with liquid that smelled like rot and waste. I looked toward the inner city walls in the distance. A heavy weight settled in my chest. I sighed deeply. I used to think that as long as I unified the world and kept taxes low, the people's lives would naturally improve. I was wrong. I had oversimplified everything. It was a joke. I, the emperor, was doing a worse job than a lowly village magistrate. Your Majesty, Guo whispered, trying to comfort me. You rule the entire world. A tiny county can't be compared to the whole empire. I didn't answer. I just kept walking through the mud. By the time we reached the inner city 15 minutes later, I was drenched. My boots were ruined, and Guo was panting behind me, struggling under the weight of 20 pounds of tea. I had a lot to think about. I was used to the rigors of military life. My body was fit, and my pace was naturally fast, so I didn't think twice about the distance. Behind me, however, Guo Tianyang was struggling. He was panting like a broken bellows, his face flushed as he scrambled to keep up with my long strides. Once we finally crossed into the inner city, he let out a massive sigh of relief. He leaned over, hands on his knees, gasping for air. Your Majesty, he wheezed. There is a secret guard outpost nearby. Let me arrange for a carriage. The rest of the way will be much easier. I nodded, taking a moment to look around. The roads here were flatter, but they were still a muddy mess. That same foul stench from the outer slums lingered in the air, clinging to my clothes. Looking at the chaos of the capital, I fell back into my own thoughts. Something had to change. While I was trekking through the muck, the Grand Secretary, Li Yensong, was buried under a mountain of paperwork in the cabinet office. He and the other senior officials were drowning in problems. Suddenly, a minor clerk burst into the room, looking frantic. He pulled a red envelope from his belt, waving it in the air. Lordly, news of the emperor. Every head in the room snapped up. Li Yensong dropped his brush and scrambled to his feet. He tore the letter open, his eyes darting across the page. A massive grin spread across his face. Gentlemen, he announced joyfully, His Majesty has returned to the palace. The other scholars, Zheng Xiao and Zhang Dongxiang, let out shouts of relief. He's finally back. He left a single note and vanished, leaving the crown prince in charge of a state he refuses to govern. This nightmare is finally over. Li Yensong turned to the clerk. Quick, send word to the messengers heading for Hengjiang. Tell them they can come back. The search is over. Once the clerk hurried out, Li Yensong smoothed his robes. I'm going to the royal study to pay my respects. Who's coming? We are, the others shouted in unison. The three of them rushed to the study as fast as their old legs could carry them. Guo Tianyang was already waiting at the door. Please, enter, he said with a tired smile. His Majesty has been waiting for quite some time. Inside, the scene was grim. The memorials and reports were piled so high on my desk, they looked like a small mountain range. The three officials had come in ready to complain and demand answers for my disappearance. But seeing me buried in work, they hesitated. Li Yensong cleared his throat. Your Majesty, why did you leave without a word? The court was in a state of absolute panic. I didn't look up. I kept my brush moving, marking the documents with steady strokes. I just wanted to take a walk, I said calmly. But tell me, while I was gone, how did the crown prince handle the regency? What did the ministers accomplish? Li Yinsong choked on his words. He had a list of grievances a mile long, but mentioning the prince made him freeze. Zheng Qiao stepped forward, his voice trembling with frustration. Your Majesty, the prince hasn't attended a single court session since you left. We don't even know where he is half the time. I felt a spark of heat in my chest. You are the senior ministers of this empire. Did you not think to control him? It's not that we didn't try, Zhang Dongxiang blurted out, his face reddening. We simply couldn't. He claims to be sick every single day. One day it's a headache, the next it's his feet. We send doctors, they find nothing, but he insists he's suffering. And while we're drowning in work, he's been building a tiger and leopard garden in the East Palace. He spends his days watching beasts fight instead of ruling. Zhang was a hot-tempered man. Once he started, he couldn't stop. The other two tried to pull him back, but he kept ranting while cold sweat poured down their faces. My expression grew darker with every word. So, I said, my voice dangerously low. My son has spent his days in leisure, doing absolutely nothing of substance. I felt the veins in my temples throbbing. I wanted to grab a heavy mace and crack that brat over the head myself. Li Yinsong tried to soften the blow. Well, not entirely nothing. He went to the military camps twice. Said he was inspecting discipline and training the men. But other than that, nothing. Fine. Good, I said, my anger reaching a boiling point. I had come back hoping to see progress, but instead, I found a mountain of neglected work and a son who thought the empire was a playground. Where is he now? Likely at his new garden, Zhang Dongxiang muttered. He's obsessed with it. It's not the behavior of a future ruler, sire. I stood up abruptly. You've worked hard. Go home. We will speak more tomorrow. Gua, get the carriage ready. We're going to the East Palace. At the Tiger and Leopard Garden, a massive tiger was currently stalking two old horses. The crown prince, Li Yuanzhao, sat in a plush chair, watching with wide-eyed excitement. His personal eunuch, Lu Jin, stood behind him with a face full of misery. Lu Jin knew he was in trouble. The regency should have been the prince's chance to shine, but instead, the boy had used the opportunity to build a private zoo and skip work. Lu Jin blamed himself. He was the one who had told the prince stories about tigers and leopards in the first place. If the emperor found out, Lu Jin's skin would be the first thing pinned to a wall. Down in the pit, the tiger lunged. It tore into one horse, then disemboweled the other with its massive teeth. Li Yuanzhao sighed, looking bored. Lu, watching these old nags die is dull. Find me another tiger. I want to see them fight each other. Lu Jin wiped sweat from his brow. Your Highness, you haven't been to court in days. The ministers are furious. If His Majesty returns, how will we explain this? Who cares what they think? Yuanzhao snapped. The world is at peace. What is there for me to do? The cabinet can handle the boring stuff. My only regret is that I was born too late. If I were older, I'd be on the battlefield right now, carving out an empire. He let out a dramatic, soulful sigh. Reading and writing, that's not for real men. A true man should lead armies. If I weren't the prince, I'd be the greatest general in history. It's a tragedy, really. My father already won all the glory. It's almost hateful. Why did the heavens create him, and then create me? A single tear actually rolled down his cheek. He looked like a man who was deeply misunderstood by the world. Lu Jin, however, had turned as white as a sheet. He saw me standing right behind the prince. His knees shook so hard he had to lean against the wall. He knew his short life was about to end, just like those horses in the pit. I narrowed my eyes, listening to my son's filial speech. I knew he was a handful, but I didn't realize his ego had grown this bloated. Why did the heavens create him, and then create me? If this was the beast I was supposed to hand my empire to, we were all doomed. I stepped forward, a thin smile on my face, and placed a heavy hand on Li Yuanzhao's shoulder. Since you love fighting so much, I whispered into his ear, why don't you jump down there? That tiger looks like a worthy opponent. Yuanzhao froze. He recognized my voice instantly. His eyes went wide, and he slowly, painfully turned his head. He forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. Father, you're finally back. I've missed you so much. I leaned in closer, my voice dripping with ice. I heard my dear son has been ill for many days. I've come to check on your health. I looked at my son. Li Yuanzhao was sweating bullets, the drops rolling down his forehead like fat beans. He looked like he wanted to vanish into the floor. I came specifically to see you, I said, my voice smooth and dangerous. It seems my son has plenty of energy after all. Father, he couldn't even finish a sentence. I gave him a thin smile. Come, follow me to the Imperial Garden. This place is too cramped. I can't quite stretch my limbs here. And bring that little eunuch of yours along, too. I turned and walked out of the Tiger and Leopard Park without looking back. Behind me, I heard Lu Jin's teeth chattering. He crawled over to the prince, swallowing hard. Your Highness, I'm finished, Lu Jin whispered, his voice cracking. I only have one wish. Please, make sure my body is kept in one piece after I'm gone. Li Yuanzhao snapped, his fear turning into a desperate rage. You useless trash. Why didn't you warn me the Emperor was coming? I couldn't. Lu Jin stammered, shaking like a leaf. He came too fast. I was scared to death. My legs won't even move. Li Yuanzhao's face went pale. He was 15, and he realized his short life might be coming to an end right here. He shivered, thinking of the storm that was about to break. He kicked Lu Jin, who was still sprawled on the ground. Get up. Fast. Go grab my thickest padded coats. And get my special gear ready. A few minutes later, I was sitting in a pavilion in the Imperial Garden. My face was a mask of stone. In my left hand, I gripped a thick, heavy wooden staff. In my right, I held a long leather whip. I had sent my men to the armory specifically to find the most painful tools available. I gave the staff an experimental swing. It shattered a stone railing. I flicked the whip, and it snapped a thick tree branch clean off. Good. My strength hadn't faded with age. They say a stick breeds a filial son. I had tried everything else. I gave him the best teachers in the world and the most perfect environment. And yet, he had grown into a crooked weed. I used to think he was just spirited, that the cabinet ministers could mold him. But he was worse than I thought. When I was 15, I was leading charges on the battlefield, winning military honors. My son, at 15, he was playing with tigers and dogs. He was a parasite. He wasn't even worth the dirt on that Taoyuan County Magistrate's boots. If he thought I was a toothless tiger, he was about to learn a very painful lesson. A dark, violent aura flickered in my eyes. I was going to beat the beast out of him. Li Yuanzhao finally appeared, creeping into the garden with Lu Jin panting behind him. I looked up. The boy looked twice as fat as he had 10 minutes ago. He had that innocent, pathetic look on his face that he always used to get out of trouble. In the past, my affection for him let it slide. Not today. He had been acting as regent, and he chose to play these games? If I kept spoiling him, he'd flip the whole world upside down. Lu Jin was in even worse shape. His legs were knocking together so hard I could hear them. Tears were pooling in his eyes, ready to spill at any second. I didn't say a word. I just stared at them. Li Yuanzhao forced a weak smile and swallowed hard, keeping his head low. Lu Jin knelt so deeply he looked like he wanted to bury his head in the dirt. The silence stretched on until it was unbearable. Finally, Li Yuanzhao peeked up, only to meet my murderous gaze. He slammed his forehead against the ground. Father, I deserve 10,000 deaths. The garden went deathly quiet. Even the birds stopped singing. Only Lu Jin's heavy, panicked breathing filled the air. The prince wants to be a general? I said quietly. My voice was eerily calm. You said I stole all the military glory for myself? Fine. Let's have a little contest today. I tossed the heavy staff. It landed at his feet with a dull thud and bounced. Li Yuanzhao turned cold. Sweat poured off him. I am no match for father, he stammered. I'm still young. I'm still growing. I stared at him. Not only was he a brat, but he had also become shameless. My face darkened. It seems the prince really is ill, I said coldly, wearing so many clothes in this heat. Yes, he said quickly. I caught a chill. I'm very cold. I snapped the whip in the air. Crack. Men, strip this animal's clothes off. Let's see how sick he is. The guards hesitated for a second, then stepped forward. Li Yuanzhao tried to resist, but one look at my face made him go limp. They peeled off his outer robe. Underneath was a thick, padded jacket. They unzipped that, and there was another one. And another. He was wearing 4 layers of heavy padding over his white silk shirt. As they pulled off the last layer, A thick iron plate fell out and hit the stone floor with a loud clang. I stared at it, speechless. Li Yuanzhao hung his head in shame. The pants too, I growled. Strip them. He reluctantly stepped out of his trousers. An iron butt protector fell out. Then iron knee pads. Then another metal plate for his thighs. A small mountain of armor sat on the ground between us. I exploded. You animal. You worthless, cheating brat. Are you trying to kill me with anger? Since the day you were born, you've had the best of everything. I fought for this empire so you would never know the horrors of war. I didn't ask you to be a genius. I just wanted you to be a stable ruler. You are my only son. All my hope was in you. I stood up, pointing the whip at him. And what do? You've read all those books, and for what? To stuff them into a dog's belly? I see it clearly now. You aren't fit to be an emperor. You aren't even fit to be a lowly county magistrate. Men, tie him up. I'm going to teach him how to be a human being today. Li Yuanzhao had been terrified, but hearing me compare him to a lowly magistrate sparked something in him. His stubbornness flared up. Wait, he shouted. Father, I'm just not good at books. If we talk about war or governance, how do you know I'm inferior? If I had been born a few years earlier, I might have been the one to conquer the great Qi. How can you compare me to a tiny magistrate? I have the talent of a supreme commander. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You arrogant little brat. Tie him up. The guards swarmed him. They bound him tight and hoisted him up by his arms from the corner of the pavilion. Li Yuanzhao hung there, his face beet red with humiliation. I was born at the wrong time, he yelled, still trying to act tough. The timing was wrong. I'm being wronged. This is a tragedy. The veins on my forehead were bulging. I swung the whip with everything I had. Snap! The whip lashed across his backside. All that teenage rebellion vanished in an instant. Father! Stop! I'm just a child, he screamed. A child? I warred. Fine. Let's see how this child likes the taste of the whip.